going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, thanks to the amazing team over at Shozy Store, we're going to be checking out the MetaGate Huge Fire, which is their take on a legend scale Bumblebee movie, Optimus Prime. Now, for those of you looking to add this guy to the collection, I'll of course be sure to smack a link down in the description box below. And I don't know about yourselves, but MetaGate are very quickly becoming one of my favourite third-party companies. You know, it's just been hit after hit after hit. They gave us this incredible masterpiece scale triple changing drift based on Age of Extinction. Then they gave us a terrific Beast Wars Pterosaur, and now they're back with, I think, one of the first ever live action movie figures to be in the Legends MP scale, and this is something I've wanted to see for years. You know, some of the masterpiece scale Optimuses have been mind-blowing, but it's about damn time we saw something a little different, and quite literally a little different, because this guy is tiny. I mean, I'd say he's just a little bigger than what you'd expect from one of the Hasbro core classes, and would you ever believe he could transform? I mean, from the front he looks banging, but as you turn him here to the back, I mean, look at that, so nicely done. We get this wicked gunmetal metallic spinal column, which just looks insane, and much like the front, you know, the majority of the back of the figure has been fully painted, and yeah, just the way everything stacks up is so impressive. And then as we come here to the front of the guy, just looks incredible. So here for the mouthpiece, you can see all of that kind of Cybertronian techie detail. I personally love the way the face and the shoulders look. I mean, that is so incredible. And, you know, the sides of the arms, the front of the forearms, everything about this guy is painted where you'd like it to be. And here for the inside of the legs, I mean, look at that. That is so nicely detailed. We even get a bit of copper there for a piston. And personally, I love the foot design. I know that's kind of strange to say, but it's kind of triple layered. So you get the top, the middle and the bottom, and the way it comes together, you know, it's very accurate to Bumblebee and even pretty spot on to how we see it in Rise of the Beast. So yeah, I think that looks pretty awesome, and despite this guy being legend scale, I can tell you something, he is built so well. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's not too much die cast, or if any die cast in him at all, but the plastic they've used is very good. You know, at no point during transformation do I feel like I'm going to break something. You know, just having him here in my hand, he feels as good as some of the Hasbro Deluxes, maybe even a little better. So yeah, really impressive, but believe me, it's just about to get even better. So for articulation, you know, the head can look way past what you'd expect, you know, from just the average Optimus Prime. So yeah, that is wicked. It can look down, it can tilt side to side. If I were to be critical, I will say that this piece here that we have for the back does kind of stick out. You know, I do wish this metallic silver piece could have ducked down just a little bit, but factoring in the scale, that is literally a minor qualm. You know, the shoulders can go forwards and backwards, they can go out to the sides. We do get a really good bicep rotation, single jointed elbows, as well as a tiny bit of wrist rotation, but it's all got to do with the waist and the hips. These are phenomenal. So the waist can rotate the full 360, but that's not it, because bang, we get a proper intentional ab crunch, and surprisingly it looks pretty natural from almost every single angle. So yeah, I thought that was pretty impressive for the size. And then the hips, so we get the standard traditional ball joint. You know, it can move to an adequate range, but they've engineered some drop down hips, so you can then take the leg and look at that high kick. That is so awesome. I think that beats what we see from some of the actual masterpiece scale figures. So yeah, that is just incredible, and much like the ab crunch, to be fair, looks pretty natural. You know, I don't have many qualms with this at all. Looks really awesome. You know, they can kick out to the sides. The side skirts are on little hinge joints, so that's kind of cool. It can kick back, I'd say, about to that far. We do get a nice thigh rotation, double jointed knees, so that can bend past 90, and then here for the foot, it can go forwards, backwards, and can also rock side to side. So overall, you know what, guys, factoring in the scale, I am so impressed with what MetaGate have put out, and I can only hope they continue this line. I'd love to see a Soundwave, a Shockwave. I know they're doing a Bumblebee, but come on, they've got to give us the rest of the Cybertronian cast, and don't stop at Bumblebee. Delve into some of the Michael Bay movies. I think it would be sick to see that original Optimus Prime design in this size. But anyway, in terms of accessories, in addition to the pair of fisted hands we get, there's also an ion blaster. Now, this looks so accurate. Unfortunately, it's not painted. You know, it would have been cool had there been a bit of silver dry brushing, but very nicely sculpted. You know, you can smack it into them fisted hands, pull off all of those sick poses that we see in the Bumblebee movie, or we get these tiny little tabs, which, as you would expect, do smack themselves into this back port. So if you wanted this kind of slung over the back, then that is definitely a look you can have. And then finally, we get a pair of kind of slightly more expressive open hands, which I really like, and you know, they completely turn the tides in terms of the poses that you can get out of this guy. But I will be honest and say, I wish they packed in, you know, a command hand. I'd say accessories do kind of let this guy down, you know, with the likes of New Age and Magic Square. They give us so many different dynamic hand gestures. I really think that could have probably made this guy a near 10 out of 10. But as it stands, it's okay, and I imagine the accessory department is something we'll see them improve upon with their next couple of releases. So all that being said, let's jump into a few comparisons. So first up, here we have him alongside the New Age David. I think that's what this guy's called, but basically a Legends scale version of the G1 Optimus Prime. And as you guys can see, you know, quite literally in that Legends MP scale. And it is so awesome to see them kind of tackle the live action movie designs, because don't get me wrong, you know, some of the engineering on these G1 designs is incredibly impressive, but when you're dealing with live action, you're dealing with hyper realistic, lots of techie detail and realistic alt modes. I just think the engineering becomes a lot more harder. And as you guys can see, in terms of robot mode, you know, they've done such a stunning job. I mean, I'd go as far as saying the backpack on the Bumblebee movie Optimus is better than what we're seeing here from New Age's G1 Optimus. So yeah, just super impressive, and I can only hope that in the future, you know, maybe they're packing a bit of die cast, but it's definitely not a game changer because, as I said previously, the quality of the plastic is literally top notch as it is. Here he is alongside the Trumpeter model version of Soundwave, also based on Bumblebee. Now, this guy doesn't transform, it is quite literally just a robot, but if you own some of these guys, I do think this Optimus is going to scale and pair very nicely with these. I am just hoping, again, like I said before, that MetaGate tackle these designs and give us proper transforming Legends MP scale versions of these, because it would be so awesome. But as you guys can see, do you know what, in terms of a head-to-head, I think this looks pretty much spot on to what we saw in the film, so yeah, that's pretty cool. Here he is next to a proper Hasbro core class figure. So this is the Bumblebee movie Shockwave. As you guys can see, he is a little bigger, but do you know what? When you factor in the scale difference, to be fair, the engineering is quite extraordinary because he's not that much bigger than Shockwave. And just in terms of how much is packed into this guy, it's quite literally mind-blowing, which you're going to see in just a second. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think he's going to scale too well with some of these core class figures, but if you own some of the older Legends figures that they used to put out, then I don't think it's going to be too bad. Here's a Hasbro Deluxe class, so we have the Rise of the Beast Bumblebee, and surprisingly, there's not much difference in terms of the scale. You know, Optimus is just slightly smaller than Bumblebee, but is worlds apart in terms of how much engineering is packed into him, so yeah, it's kind of crazy. Here's the Rise of the Beast Deluxe Air Razor in her Beast mode. Here's the movie line Voyager class Optimus Primal based on Rise of the Beasts, and if you were to judge from the previous trailer, do you know what? I don't think this is too far off at all. So if you want an Optimus which perhaps scales a little better with some of these Rise of the Beast Maximals, then I don't think this is going to look too bad at all. And for two slightly larger comparisons, here he is alongside the Voyager Optimus Prime based on Rise of the Beasts, and the MetaGate Haigu, which was their version of the triple changing drift, and such an outstanding figure. You know, I think it has the potential to maybe be one of my best third-party figures of all time, so I only hope they continue creating figures because, as I said, every single release so far has been an absolute knockout. Cannot wait for their MetaGate Bumblebee, and I also know they're bringing out a Transformers 5 version of this drift, so definitely going to be exciting to check that one out as well. Now, as we get stuck into the transformation, this is quite literally where the fun begins because the engineering on this guy is nuts. So, to kickstart things off with, you are going to want to take the hands, and they do just kind of very gently recess inside the forearms. So, do the same here for this side, just push them in slightly. We can now take the forearm guard, bring this piece out, and once it's detached, it will basically do a backflip on itself. So, you'll rotate it upwards and then flip it around, and then just make sure that it's straightened out. Do the same here for this side, so detach this panel, make it do a backflip, and then rotate it here all the way around. Next up, you're then going to want to take the shoulders, detach those away from the chest, and just bring these pieces down. We can now flip here to his back and detach the kind of spinal column away from the neck. Once you've done that, we can then angle the front of the truck outwards like this, and basically do the exact same here for the chest. So take the chest windows, detach those, bring these pieces down, and then take the neck, lift this whole assembly up, flip out what will become the truck doors, and then just straighten all of this out. Then what I'd recommend to do would be to just lift these shoulder joints here upwards as we're going to flip to the legs. So this time you're going to want to use both the ball joints and the drop down hinge that I showcased for articulation. Just straighten all of this out, just like that. Flip here to the underside, take these side skirt pieces, and just collapse these pieces inwards. And now this is where things can become a little tricky. So rotate here at the shoulder so the smokestack is facing towards the back, and then take the smokestack and angle it upwards just like this. Now what's going to happen is basically we're going to tuck this here under, just like this, as you guys can see. And then what you're going to want to do is make sure that you straighten out that bicep, bend here at the elbow, and then rotate this section here down. And this section is just going to tuck just like that. So things should line up like this. Come here to this side, do the same. So bring that to the back, take the smokestack, angle it out to the side, and basically just flip this piece inwards, bend here at the elbow, and then rotate this section here all the way down, and just snap that section into the front of the truck. Now personally what I'd recommend to do would be to take the head and rotate it so the front is now facing the back. I've just found this to work a lot easier personally, but you know, your mileage may vary. I didn't actually receive instructions with this because it was a sample, so it may be inaccurate, but it does work for me. Then what you're going to do is take these shoulder pieces, just bring these pieces here around, and then we're going to take this, tuck the head down, rotate this section, and then snap that up. And as you can see, there are no gaps. Everything does line up really nicely. So far so good. Then what you're going to want to do is make sure these stacks are lifted upwards. We can then collapse the chest in upon itself, take the stacks and then straighten them out. Unfortunately, they don't flip, so for truck mode, they are going to look a little strange, but for the scale, you know, I do think it's pretty passable. And then we come here to the legs, which, as I'm sure you guys would expect, do form the back of the truck. And the engineering in these two are pretty cool. So basically take the feet, angle these sections here down, and as I said previously, they're kind of triple layered. So we get the top layer, you're going to want to slide that out, and then we get the bottom layer, so slide this piece out. Do the same here for this side, so slide that section out, slide this piece here out, and now what you're going to want to do is rotate at the thigh. So rotate that around and make sure that the thigh and the hip are very nicely lined up so we have a complete smooth flat surface. Do the same here for this side, so rotate at the thigh, make sure that that's completely smooth and nicely lined up. We can now detach the back of the leg, hinge this out to the side, and personally I love the way the wheels slide down. So you basically take them, shift them down, and then slide them out. Very simple, very effective in my opinion, and do the same here for this side. So just slide that all the way out and then slide this section here down. Next up, you're going to want to take this piece, which will become the back of the truck. Kind of difficult to fold it out, but fold it out and then flip it around, and then we get this shin piece. So in order to kind of get it, personally, I like to stick my fingernail here in the back. Just kind of pokes it out. It does create a nice lip, so that we can just flip this section here forwards. And now it's just a matter of kind of lining everything up perfectly. So make sure that's straightened out. That is going to find itself in the shin of the other leg. So snap that in there, and then just snap this piece in here at the rear. Make sure that these legs are nice and straightened out, so you should be left with something which looks like this. And now what's going to happen is this is going to come up. That little slot is going to smack itself into that tab. And you're basically just going to want to make sure that everything slides in nicely, and there is a little tab here that will peg into a slot. Just give that there a good old squeeze, and do the same here for this side. So bring this piece here down, make sure that that there does tuck underneath the red section, and then give that there a good old squeeze. And bang! There we have MetaGate's Huge Fire fully transformed into his truck mode. And bearing the scale of this thing in mind, not a terrible looking truck. Now granted, it's by no stretch of the imagination the best. Unfortunately, it probably is his weakest mode, but honestly, I don't think it is the worst Optimus Prime truck I've ever seen, and definitely not for the size. So, you know, here from the top, it doesn't look the best. It would have been awesome had they found a way to, you know, have incorporated just one additional panel to come over the top and kind of cover all of this up, because, yeah, that doesn't look too great. I'm not the biggest fan of how the smokestacks look, but I guess for the size, you know, it does the job. It doesn't look awful, and the whole trailer bed is very long. But I did actually go back and look at the real truck they used in the Bumblebee movie, and it did have kind of an extraordinary long trailer bed. So I guess in some ways it's accurate and looks to be pretty clean. I mean, there's no trailer hitch detail per se, but it definitely doesn't look the ugliest. And this is what Prime looks like from the underside. We do get some pretty decent paint here, smack bang and center. So yeah, that's kind of cool. I am wondering how they're going to approach the Bumblebee, considering that does transform into a Volkswagen Bug, so it's going to be a little more difficult, you know, has a lot more curves when in comparison to a flat-nosed truck. But all things considered, it's a small-scale Optimus, which has a wicked robot mode and transforms into a decent-looking truck. And all 6 wheels are pinned on, as you guys know. Love pinned-on wheels, so he has no issues in rolling out, which is sick. Now, unfortunately, I haven't found any way at all to store the blaster on. As I said, I didn't get instructions with this because it was a sample. I did think that maybe these pegs would find themselves smacking into these slots, but they're just way too small, and you do run the risk of potentially, you know, damaging the size of the port and scratching the paint off. So in all honesty, I'd recommend just to set it off to the side. Now, in terms of a few comparisons, here's the Hasbro Core Class Shockwave, the Deluxe Class Rise of the Beast Bumblebee, just so you guys can see roughly how the Legends MP scale fares in comparison to a Deluxe figure. Movie line Voyager Class Optimus Prime, Deluxe Class Maximal Air Razor, and where, you know, kind of the larger scale of the Maximals worked in the robot mode in comparison to this Prime, for vehicle mode, I don't think it works out as well, because she is way bigger than you would literally ever possibly imagine a Falcon being to a truck. So yeah, if you were to go with this display, honestly, I'd stick with them in robot mode, because unless you want the Maximals to be quite literally monstrous in their alt modes, then I don't think this is going to work out too well, unfortunately. And then the movie line Optimus Primal, also based on Rise of the Beasts. And wrapping up on this review for the MetaGate Huge Fire Legend Scale Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime. Overall, you know, I think it's such a solid entry by MetaGate. As I said previously, you know, they've just been creating hit after hit after hit, and this is another really well done quality product. You know, in terms of the materials, this guy feels exceptional, and that's something I wasn't expecting to say for a figure of which is their first attempt at a Legend Scale release, and one which is very small. You know, we're dealing with a lot of very small hinge joints, and nothing on this guy feels brittle. The plastic feels awesome, and despite there being no die cast, he still does have a pretty decent weight to him. And then we just talk about the figure as a whole. Awesome looking robot mode, you know, really does put to shame some of those MP scale versions of this Bumblebee movie design. You know, it's such a fantastic looking figure, wicked paint, wicked detail, extraordinary articulation for a figure of this size. You know, the hip joint and the ab crunch literally sold this for me. It is so poseable, lots of things you can do with this guy in the robot mode, and the transformation, do you know what, it's not too bad. Of course, it's a little more involved than your average core Legend Scale figure, but I think it does result in a decent looking truck mode. You know, truck mode definitely is the weakest out of the modes, but when you factor in the scale, you factor in the price point, honestly guys, I don't think it is terrible. You know, it's a very good robot which transforms into a decent enough truck, so I'm going to let it slide. The only area which I really hope they improve upon for the future would be accessories. You know, much like New Age, much like Magic Square, it would have been great to have gotten a whole array of different hands instead of just fists and gestured hands. You know, had we got a command hand, I think that would have been awesome, and to be fair, I probably wouldn't have had anything to complain about, and even that is a nitpick, because in all, this is a really nicely done figure, and I cannot wait for their Bumblebee. So with all that being said, if you guys like what you see, be sure to check out that link down in the description box below, and I would be so appreciative if you guys could use the creator code PVP at checkout, as it goes a massive way in helping the channel out. I want to thank you guys all so much for watching, and until my next video, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.